Welcome to the Consultants Way podcast, where we explore the world of professional services consulting. Hosted by Dean McMann and Anthony Paluska, each episode delivers expert insights, real-world stories, and interviews with top consultants to help you refine your consulting skills.
Welcome back to the Consultants Way podcast. We've got Dean McMann and Anthony Paluska, and today we're excited to be joined by Neil Parekh. Neil, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
What I like about Neil, best of all, he's got my haircut.
That's great, and that's how we select guests.
That's how we select guests. Yeah, they either have to look like me or be older than me.
Yep. Well, Neil's here today. Neil's got some. I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more. Neil's got some extensive experience leading and driving growth and success within professional services organizations. Neil, before we dive into the kind of the details and the meat of the conversation, would you mind giving us a little bit of your background and credentials?
Sure. I've been basically professional services and IT services for pretty much my entire career. I was in-house for a little bit, out of college, and then just, got into professional services and never looked back. IT focused, generalized services, obviously things change over time on the type of technologies, but at a high level, cloud, cybersecurity, collaboration, app dev, and data is kind of the solutions I've been driving.
Great. So today, as you've got that experience over the course of your career, we want to talk about some emerging trends and some themes as how companies are evolving and changing a little bit. We can go in a bunch of different directions. I know you've got some thoughts around this. Any big overarching trend that you want to get us started with here?
Yeah, I think generally is success around professional services, the measurement of success. I think it's regressed, it has changed, and then it's evolved and then regressed, right? And with the market, technology obviously leading the way, our customers have changed as well, right? They became more savvy around tech, and I think how we sell services and how we measure success has changed. And I think, as professional services organizations, we have to evolve with the market. We can get into some examples too, if you like, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I was reading something the other day. Right? Deloitte posted something at the end of 2024, I believe it was, on how the shift of professional services and the goals have transitioned a bit from the profit and revenue growth to more of driving adoption and those sorts of things. It's certainly something we're seeing with some of the clients we're working with in the professional services spaces, that there's the market pressures that are changing growth, but there's also organizational changes and attitudes of what role professional services plays that's driving.
Yeah, after the land grab, we still have to grow and make money. So how are we gonna do that if we don't use professional services as our key spear into our customers?
Absolutely. I mean, I think managed service and recurring revenue is kind of name of the game these days, especially with all the acquisitions of private equity. But customers are generally not going to buy recurring services right off the bat. There's always that courting kind of situation, and that's professional services, and that's the role we play, right? We have to get to that end state that we're going to manage or control for the customer, right? If they're going to outsource their IT, and that's where professional services play. We have to get them to that end state, give that executive advice, and the recommendations around what the optimal outcome is going to be. I think a lot's changed in terms of the type of consultants that go on site these days, or remote or hybrid. Customers are way more savvy, as I mentioned. It's not like back 20 years ago where customers they didn't know the word technology. They just knew they had to do something, and it was a necessary evil. And they would hire a big six firm. They would throw in 15 people into a war room. 14 of them being juniors, and a senior guy would come in and out, or gal, and then they would just invoice and bill, and then just slam up with change orders, right? That doesn't work anymore because customers are obviously technology's evolved, and customers are in the loop. They're reading the news. They know what AI is. They know what cloud is, right? Cybersecurity. Everyone's thinking about it, right? So they're very savvy, and it's very difficult to have those type of models anymore.
Yeah, what we see is this difficulty between the balance of having expertise and knowledge applied to the client, plus real consulting skills. So one of the nice things the old model has, at least they knew how to bring the client along with them, how to talk to executives. Now we see when we have so much technological expertise, they drive the project, but they can't bring the client along with them always. So if you will, the problems raise up, and people like yourself end up having to be more involved with client.
Correct.
That balance is what we're really all about, trying to figure out how do we bring the capabilities into those experienced people who may not have grown up as advisors.
Yeah, I mean, it's really teaching that soft skill. I mean, sometimes you can't teach a soft skill, but there's a lot of people with potential when they get into consulting, and you really have to coach them and grow them to be that advisor, that trusted advisor to those executives and those clients, those customers, right? So, ideally, they're not, there's not always an escalation to me or a manager or whatnot. Like the consultant can solve it, right? Have the empowerment to solve the problem for the customer. Uh, it's just I think the measurement of success has changed right over the years, and I think consultants are confused on like how to handle certain situations because of the external pressures of metrics, right? So we have to balance what that success criteria is, and empower them to solve the problems for the customer.
Yeah, I mean, dive a little deeper into that if you don't mind, right? The measurements of success, you brought that up a couple of times now. What does success look like now in the new age of professional services, and how does that compare to maybe what it looked like in the past? And
or is it different depending on where you are in the quarter, and different depending on what new management comes in? How do we measure success?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the past, I think all of us kind of it was T&M, right? You bill by the hour, just like a lawyer, right? And you slam them with change orders, right? As you keep going, if there's changes in the project, and again, customers are more savvy, and I think they're looking for solutions and outcomes, right? They want to know what it's going to cost. They're relying on our expertise to know exactly what the outcome is going to look like and how much it's going to cost, right? So I think the conundrum these days is fixed fee versus T&M, right? And measuring the revenue recognition, because Dean, to your point, there's external, sometimes management pressures, and a lot of cases external, investment pressures, private equity or whatnot, to pull in that revenue fast, right? And historically in professional services, utilization was the end all be all, right? You get as much utilization out of someone as possible, right? And uh, I don't think that's fair to the customer, right? I mean, there's many cases that where billing T&M and utilization that could be relevant, right? There's a lot of unknowns, something very very custom, and customer agrees to that those risks. But generally, like it doesn't help the customer. I think it influences the wrong behavior on the consultant, right? Just to bill as much time as possible. Where I think the right way to go is you kind of measure revenue, right, and realization. You have a price of the project, right? That hopefully you have some discovery and some intelligence behind it, and you price the project, and then the consultant is driven to deliver that optimal outcome for the customer. They know what they're going to pay. We know what we're going to get. They know what kind of revenue they're going to generate, right? And utilization becomes a secondary metric. You want to know, if they're generally busy, but I think utilization can be gamed a lot, right? And the consultants, try to game as much as possible, especially if it's bonus driven in some way. So I think, you have to get creative around that. It's average billable rate based on fixed fee when as much as you can do it, and I think everyone's happy, right? Savvy customers will understand it.
We grew up in the fixed fee world, and we think it creates a lot of discipline, right? So what's your margin going to be? It makes you have to plan ahead, makes you have to anticipate. You can't just lollygag around because, hey, I'm going to run out of time if I don't fix this now, if I don't tell the client now. So I think and if you're really good, you can get better margins.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think a client would care if if you scope something for you have a fixed fee project that's generally estimated 6 weeks duration and price as such, but you finish it in a month. right?
No,
Why
they
would
won't care because they had a
Yeah, they
number.
don't care as long as it's done right.
Yeah, the
And
outcome's what matters, right? To your point on buyers are more savvy now. Buyers used to feel like the time and materials was an easier way to manage cost and to solve those kinds of things. But the savvier buyers say, hey, the fixed fee engagements, or I guess even increasingly so, the outcome focused engagements, and some performance related ones like that are actually a much cleaner and simpler way for me to know what I'm buying, know what I'm signing up for, and then I can manage my consultants to making sure that they're delivering on the outcomes rather than manage to a set number of hours that people kind of game and do all sorts of other things with.
This reminds me of I had a group that did handyman work for me. I used to have a big estate and we've downsized, but they do handyman, and it was always here's the fixed fee, and then we didn't anticipate that's the projects I want more money, right? So eventually we parted ways. And my wife asked me about it. I thought you really liked that. I'll leave their name out. I thought you really liked them. I said, well, I liked fixed fee, but it was never really fixed fee and it wasn't during the project we talked about it. And she said, you hold everybody to the same standard that you hold consultants to. I go, yeah. I just want honesty, right? Yeah. I wouldn't mind if he made better margin, but I don't like the unanticipated, fixed fee turned into time and materials, if you know what I mean. Matter of fact, my renovation of a house recently did that, and I'll be upset about that a long time. Always. So tell me some of offer changes you see now other than fixed fee, or any impact from the AI. Are you feeling any of that?
I'm not feeling the impact of AI just yet. I think there's a lot of interest and curiosity, right, from customers around AI, and they ask us like, how can they use AI? Because at the executive level, again, they're reading about it, they're seeing it on the news, they're seeing the government investment. Like, okay, we need to do something to be, kind of be with our peers, right? And they're assuming their peers are up to speed in AI, and they will need to catch up, but they're not either, right? It's just like people in their YPO groups or entrepreneur groups are like talking about AI and say, "What are you doing?" Right? Like, "Oh, we're looking into it." Well, I better look into it, right? But they don't actually know what they're going to do with it, right? Because AI can be, in a corporate environment, if not implemented correctly, it can expose. There's a lot of security implications. There's a lot more homework and investigation you have to do. You can expose data that you don't want exposed, right? Because you have a chatbot saying, "Hey, give me the salaries of everyone on the board," right? And if you have access to it, because that area of the network wasn't locked down, it's going to spit it out and give it to you, right? And that could be just a regular employee that should not be seeing that information. So, it's moving fast though, right? So I think we're keeping an eye on it pretty closely. We're getting into Copilot with Microsoft, and obviously there's a big push there, and we're having a lot of conversations with customers on that because everyone owns some sort of Microsoft solution these days, right? So it's in the forefront.
Yeah. What other, if any, challenges have you experienced or you've seen others experience as their organizations have had to make this shift to adjust to the new buyers' expectations of, hey, we're going to deliver outcomes, we're more of the fixed fee model. It's a big change for a lot of teams.
Oh, absolutely. I think we can have a whole new episode on that topic for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think the buyers, especially when you look at private equity, and then external investors and your management that's used to these old billing models, right? T&M is easy for them to understand, right? You bill an hour, that's your rate, and you recognize that revenue, right? The ASC 606 standard, and when you get a fixed fee, it gets really confusing for them to kind of create their models of profitability and margin, in advance, right? Even though like as you do the project, it can be very, very profitable. And I think in current times, especially around the pandemic, where cash was cheap, and there was a lot of acquisitions happening, right? And we had this unknown situation where we had low supply and high demand for IT professionals. Oddly, because everyone went hybrid and or remote for most part, and companies were forced to modernize quickly, so they were just buying Zoom and Teams and trying to get to the cloud quickly and trying to do all these things that enable their workforce to work remotely. And there was not enough supply of people and that drove up rates, right? Because of demand. People weren't changing jobs because of uncertainty of the pandemic. So, like, again, supply issue, and private equity was scooping up companies for cheap, from a debt perspective, because interest rates were low. Because everyone was working remotely, utilization was high because people would just wake up at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., typically, grab something to eat downstairs or in their kitchen, and then get to work, and they don't look up till 6 again, right? So they got high throughput from the resources, uh, and then when the pandemic, kind of weaned off and people went hybrid or back to the office, that productivity decreased, right? Naturally, right? So then private equity look at the numbers like, well, in 2020 and 2021, we were having these crazy margins, and and the revenues were top, and now it's decreased, and like, what are you doing? What are you guys doing, right? But it was a natural progression. So what, as professional services leaders, we have to like rethink, how do you meet those expectations, regroup, and look at our margin profiles differently, right? We're not getting the throughput anymore because, people are going back on site. You lose time in commute, you lose time at the water cooler. They got to eat lunch, and so now it's like, how do you look at using resources differently? Fixed fee, right? Globalization resources, using lower cost resources elsewhere for certain tasks. There's different ways to get creative, but I think it was a shock to a lot of external investors, that bought during the pandemic, at those high throughput from IT resources that they're not getting anymore. And then there's a lot of change now. People are changing jobs, right?
Yeah, we see the ridiculous, headache after all the big wave in all industries during the pandemic, and people are still talking about why aren't public market, everything, why aren't the financials the same? It's ridiculous. That was an event, right? You leave the events out. You look before the event and after the event and say, how are we doing? But people don't do that.
No, they don't do that, right? They bought during the event, and they're like, look, why weren't you doing, what happened to 2020 and 2021 when you were, cranking out, right? And it's changed, and you got to manage those expectations. I think private equity is starting to get realistic on, what happened. I think they're getting more mature. They're financial guys, right? They just look at the numbers and the spreadsheet, and the operators are the ones that have to kind of manage those expectations.
If you don't mind, let's dive in a little bit to how you think about, with all of these changes and with the different expectations, how you think about building and enabling a team to be successful in this new world, and if that's changed at all. You mentioned earlier, right? We got to focus a little bit more on soft skills, and how do we train on those? How do we move some of that forward? But then it's also, you just mentioned offshoring some resources to make sure that you've got lower cost resources that can do different things. Just team structure and delivery model and any of those kinds of things, that would be interesting.
Of course, this is important to us because we have the largest PS training business, so we always like to hear, how are people doing it?
Yeah, I think mentoring obviously, is always important, right? But doing it the right way, not in a forced way. You have to allocate time for that soft skill training. Like, what are the pitfalls when you're, engaging with a customer? Obviously you have to have that technical expertise, and you assume that when you hire somebody, or you have that program that you're building someone on a technical side, an IT organization. But from a soft skill perspective, you have to hire the right personality. I think you have to vet them, kind of thoroughly, and then grow them. You have to provide those examples, that shadowing examples, and I think it's just harder in this hybrid world, right? It's not, when you have that influence, when everyone's in the office, and they just kind of just kind of watch what's going on and say, I want to be like that, right? So from a staffing perspective, again, you have to follow that pyramid, where you have your kind of junior, mid-level staff at the bottom, and then as they grow, they become senior level, right? And they're coaching and growing the people at the bottom of the pyramid. Hopefully, as the organization pyramid is getting larger, right? You're not exiting people as they grow up, right? In their careers. But again, I think soft skills, Some could be taught, some are just natural, right? And when you're bringing these people on, you really have to have that vetting and personality testing. Not everyone is cut out for it. Some people just want to be heads down, keep in the keyboard, and leave me alone, right? We need those people. But I think soft skills, some of it can be taught, right? I think, we used to have a class, you mentioned, your training organization, but we had an internal class, it's consulting 101, right? And it wasn't technical. It was just, the pitfalls of consulting, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And we get down to the basics, right? The brilliant basics, right? Like how you dress, nowadays, you get on video, just because you're at home, don't put on a baseball cap and a sweatshirt, right? When a customer's on the call, internally do what you want, what to say, what not to say, having your status reports, looking organized or being organized, you just have to have that coaching and that QA and, make sure you have that management structure that's kind of enforcing that, right? And then becomes natural to the people who, it's natural to.
Yeah, shadowing and the opportunities to do that and just observe others either in the office or at client sites have gone away. And so, right, how do we create that in a way that allows our new hires to just learn the basics, right? How do you show up? How do you present yourself? How do you look professional so that you're right? How do you, the one that we run into a lot with, our team sometimes, but with a lot of our clients is new hires. How do you show up on video when you're not leading the conversation? How do you remain engaged? And because you've got, right, we've had these experiences, and I'm sure you've seen it too, where, you people just spinning in their chair and doing all sorts, checking an email, looking at their phone. And I mean, it's
a client meeting.
Yeah, and just having awareness of all of those things is
well. Yeah,
some of that should be self-evident or innate, but it does need to be taught a little bit.
I'm going to separate that. Obviously, we think you should sprinkle in some professional training, but there is a challenge for a generation that grew up not in direct communication with people all the time, right? And they have to go through a transition to understand that it's different when you're people to people. It's different on a phone. It's different, and they just don't have that, so they look like they're interested in, it's like the worst of going to the grocery store where the person's more interested in talking to their compadre than checking you out, right? It's just like that, but yet these are highly paid people so it's an interesting time, and I have empathy on both sides, but yeah, they need to know, this is what you look like. Well, listen, this has been wonderful, and we will, you and I've hit it off so well, and I want to get you back on again. As you said, there's lots to talk about. Do you have any parting kind of impactful things you'd like everybody to know?
Professional service, if you've been in the industry for a long time, right, stick to your values, your core values, right? You're going to go through a lot of change. The market's changing, the technology's changing, right? You work with integrity and honesty, and things will work out, right? If you stay consistent, everything else works out because you can't control the world around you, right? You're gonna go work for a company, or if you have your own company and you get bought, or you merge, or you move out to another company, the environment's going to change. But I think if you know what you're doing, you believe in it, and your heart's in the right place for your clients and your employees, it's all going to work out.
Man, that couldn't have been nicer and a great summary. So thank you very much, and we'll wrap it there.
Thanks, Neil.
Great, thank you for having me.
Well, what I like about Neil is he's an experienced hand, and you can tell by the way he answered questions so smoothly, and but he really is on this move to fixed fee.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's interesting. I wonder what percent of all our partners, clients, people we influence are still in that transition or beginning that transition.
Yeah, I mean, it's one we've heard a lot more about. Clearly, in the tech space, it's growing. I'd be interested in the audience to respond, and if they hear this and they're somewhere in that journey or they haven't gone down that path, letting us know where they are in that. We are very curious about it. We could spend more time on that topic. It's tough to tell how far down that path everybody is, and we dug into this a little bit with Neil. Is like, gosh, there's a lot that has to change that begins with a mindset shift of the organization and how everybody views their individual role. We still have to deliver value. We still have to do the consulting work. We still have to do this. But truly, expectations change, and it changes the way we manage our team and operate and deal with clients.
Well, yeah, as we were talking about, you and I have been in fixed fee so long that it is a better disciplined way to run your business. It forces better activities. It's one of those drivers of making everybody better. But I would love to have him back and explore, as we're beginning at the end, is what are the challenges of these people, what they call soft skills, you and I would call consulting skills. How are they really doing, right, as they've moved into having better intelligent clients that know what should happen, need to be brought along? And that's another good thing we mentioned about fixed fee. It forces you to look down the road. If you're just time and materials, you may end up with a client problem because you've nickeled and dined them a long time, but you never had to look down the road and really manage to a budget. So I think it's an improvement for the industry.
No, I completely agree. And counter to a little bit of what Neil's saying, I think some of the buyers have moved in their sophistication and their understanding of things. Still a lot of buyers out there that we run into all the time that know that they need to be talking to consulting organizations about fixed fee model, but they say, they help justify your fixed fee pricing based on the number of hours that it rolled up to create that. So it's like, we want it hourly based, but we want a cap on it, is essentially what I think they're asking for. And
that's okay, but it's not disingenuous. It's
moving in the right direction too.
Yeah. But when they do that, I'm always, and we have a lot of great clients that do that, I'm always concerned that they're they want to know it's going to be successful. The names of the resources is not the driver of success.
Right.
But anyway, so great time with Neil. Did you want to say something else?
No, go ahead.
Great time with Neil. Thank you guys for joining.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Additionally, if you've got any suggestions for future podcast guests, or you're interested in learning anything more about the Consultant's Way business or this podcast, reach out to us at podcast@consultantsway.com or follow either of us on LinkedIn, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.